Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Good morning from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a great podcast for you. In segment number one, I'm going to recap what we all saw in the Home Run Derby on Monday. Jordan Walker being able to win over Kyle Schwarber. It was a lot of fun out there. In segment number two, one of our good friends are going to be joining me, Tanner Kern. He does such great work over at DraftKings. He's one half of the Ride the Line podcast. I'm going to ask him how he gauges the All-Star game. He's not going to be betting it too heavily, but additionally, we're going to be chatting with him about what to expect in the second half of the season and the very murky American League playoff picture as well. So we've got a lot of fun there. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys my picks and analysis for the Tuesday All-Star game as we touch them all. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, whatever you for this podcast, you have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters the naming does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Well, I did not get in any Twitter/X questions. We had ourselves a fun Home Run Derby on Monday, so let's take a look back at it and see how Jordan Walker was able to get the job done.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
By the way, I don't know if it was just me, but for one, we didn't need as much Will Ferrell, and I love Will Ferrell on the broadcast as we got, and man, I miss Chris Berman saying, back. We did not have that either, but what we did have was a really good derby in general. I thought that it was better that they didn't have the timed element of it. That's just me, but the men that got eliminated in the first round, dead last was Ben Rice. He only had 7 home runs. I thought that he might be able to lend a little bit of value. I thought Bryce Harper had some value. He had 8 home runs, same with Jack Aguileon. They both got eliminated, and I did give out Montaka Murakami to miss the semifinals. He got eliminated with 9 home runs. The 4 men that moved on, Kyle Schwarber in his home ballpark, he had 10 in the first round. You had 12 from Junior Caminero, Wilson Contreras, and Jordan Walker. They had 13 apiece in the first round, and for Wilson Contreras, he had himself back to back over 470-foot shots or something like that. It was absolutely wild. So he was able to do so. And Junior Caminero, he had a 479 and 478 on back-to-back swings as well. So that was a lot of fun. And then when you got into the semifinals, it was based on how many you had in the first round. So the 4-seed Kyle Schwarber goes up against Wilson Contreras. 9 for Kyle Schwarber, 8 for Wilson Contreras. And I bet Wilson Contreras was hoping that he could either face Junior Caminero or Jordan Walker, because that was 6-5. Jordan Walker was able to win that round. And then in the final round, Jordan Walker, he goes second. Kyle Schwarber puts up an 11 spot. Jordan Walker, he gets 12 home runs. This was tremendous, and that final swing bonus was big because you get 15 swings apiece in the final round. You had Kyle Schwarber not be able to take advantage in the final round, and then for Jordan Walker, he had 18 total swings. So you got a home run on 15, 16, 17, and then 18, so he was really able to rally from behind. I think they had a home run on something like 8 out of his last 10 swings, so he was really able to heat up late, so he was able to come back. It was a fun home run derby, in my opinion. Again, bringing back Chris Berman. I know some of you might not love him on the home run derby. I always thought he was perfect on the home run derby, but it was a great event what we saw on Monday. And if you had Jordan Walker, he was going off in a lot of books right around about 7-1 plus 650, somewhere in that neighborhood. So that was a really nice cash for you if you wound up having Jordan Walker. So we had ourselves a great home run derby there. Coming up next, how about if we take a look at where we're going to be getting in the All-Star game and a little bit more in the second half of the season, and take a look at this very murky American League with our good friend Tanner Kern right here on the Baseball Betting Show. Myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Tanner Kern aboard. He does such great work over at DraftKings. Take a look at this great game that we all know and love of baseball, but we're really he's doing so many different things. He was even looking at the hot dog eating contest like a week or two ago. So he's very dialed in there, whether it's basketball, whether it's football, whether it's the World Cup. He's got you covered. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Tanner Kern, his first and last name, and an underscore after that. And you also want to be checking out the Ride the Line podcast. He and Grant Mitchell do a great job there as well. And it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
Thank you for joining me, Tanner. And Tanner, we have now reached really the dead part of the calendar for the next week or so. And just how do you take a look at things the next few days to get set for the second half of the season? Because this is not the time, in my opinion, that you need to fire off a whole bunch of futures bets or anything like that. But I do think that it's a nice time to be able to reset and just be able to prepare for what we're going to get for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I wouldn't rush into any future bets at this point. It's a good 3-4 days to take a step back and say, hey, which teams performed really well at the end of the first half, which teams have a favorable schedule and can perform well in the second half, which is something I'm starting to go through now. And then really just saying, hey, which divisions are wide open right now? There's some divisions, you look at, across baseball, let's just say the National League West right now, Dodgers have an 11.5 game lead. There's no betting value in that division unless you can get some crazy markets where you can predict the exact order and all that. But there's a lot of division races that are pretty tight right now. And there's a lot of playoff races that are tight, especially in the American League. So looking at the teams that you feel have the best chance to maybe come from behind, make a little bit of a run and get some plus money on those teams.
Absolutely, and we've talked a lot about the American League because, man, it's one of the murkiest landscapes out there in all of baseball. I've asked you this question so many times, you're probably getting sick of me asking it, but I'll ask again. Is there any teams out there in the American League that you think are presenting value? Because at some point there needs to be a team or two that wins some games because it feels like almost nobody has thus far this season.
I'd go the reverse side of things, Greg. I would probably say the Boston Red Sox have the value to not make the playoffs right now at this point. The Red Sox go on a massive run and 9-game winning streak on the road. It's something they haven't done since the 70s. And I'm hoping I'm wrong here, but you just don't know what you're going to get with Boston. They've tended to be hot before the All-Star break a lot over the past few years. It's like a anniversary every single year. They find a way to just get hot before the break. And then the second half, it doesn't necessarily go well to start. It doesn't mean they're not going to make the playoffs, but at least on some of the prediction markets right now, you're seeing the Boston Red Sox have 52% chance to not make the playoffs, which is a ton of value considering that was a 90% chance a few weeks ago. So just being cautious on some of the teams like that got hot towards the end that might not have the team fully to make a run in the second half.
Yep, I think that's going to be interesting to look at with the Boston Red Sox because they've got a bunch of young and hungry guys that I honestly feel like have been able to do a solid job in terms of rising up, but we do have a lot of question marks there as well as we do have our good friend Tanner Kern who does such amazing work over at DraftKings. He's joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, and when it comes to the rest of the American League as well, one team that I just keep clinging towards, I want to get your thoughts here, the Texas Rangers, because you're able to get them in that neighborhood of like a plus 150 to be able to win the AL West, and I want to get your thoughts on them because I think Wyatt Langford coming back is big for them. I really like the pitching, and when I look at the rest of that AL West, I'm just really not impressed by anyone else there as well.
Yeah, the Mariners have one of the best rotations in baseball, so you have to factor that in. Their starting pitching has been just elite, but it's nothing the Texas Rangers can't keep up with. I'm not saying they're going to be as good from a starting pitching department, but, offensively, I look at the biggest threat in that division right now is the Seattle Mariners. The Houston Astros could make a run. I mean, 3 games is something that can be accomplished in a week, but, run scored wise, right in the ballpark of Seattle, definitely have allowed more runs than Seattle. And that's where the Mariners, I think, have a slight edge there in that division, but they have not proved that they can play well through the first half consistently. The Texas Rangers have been slightly better, and I think the Rangers, there's a lot more to gain here. The only thing I have a concern with them coming out of the break, you're going to have to start with the Atlanta Braves, which is definitely not going to be easy. And then you go into the White Sox, which, again, I think the White Sox are not pretenders, but I'm not saying they're going to be able to finish the second half like they started the first half. And then the Seattle Mariners go into that 4-game series. So that 4-game series against Seattle, hopefully you start hot against the Braves and the White Sox and have some momentum going into it. But it gets pretty tough there. Then you go the Rays and the Astros after it. So Texas does have a challenge on their hands to start the second half.
Yep, there's no question that they do, but I will say this as well. You mentioned the Atlanta Braves, and I'm so glad that you do because they have really been the coldest team in all of baseball. Over the last 35 days, they actually have the worst record in all of baseball. How do you take a look at them right now? Because it's been a little bit of a hodgepodge. They were so great to begin the season, but things have really fallen off for them over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and maybe a break is exactly what they need, right? There's teams like, again, the Boston Red Sox, going back to them. That's a team that, the break might not be the best thing for them. For the Atlanta Braves, it's something that definitely can help them. And I think for the Braves, too, you just look at it. You haven't had Ronald Acuna since June 9th. That's something to note. You haven't had Mike Yastrzemski since July 10th. I don't know if Yastrzemski's going to be coming back, but, he's been a decent piece. Has not been great, obviously. But Ronald Acuna, you're missing a guy who can hit for power, pretty much a five-tool player, beginning a rehab assignment on Monday. So that's going to be something to note there. He can make a move to and come back and help this team. But, the talent's there. Everyone goes through ups and downs throughout the season. I look at the overall record. First half, they're 55-40. They do that again the second half. You're 30 games over 500, and you have a very good record. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think the week off could be exactly what they need.
Yep, and then additionally, I just take a look at that NL East as well, and that way is what I think is a little bit more concerning as well, because the Marlins, since June 1st, have had the best record in all of baseball. We've seen the rise of the Philadelphia Phillies, and when it's all said and done, I think that this might be the best race in all of baseball.
I think so, too. I give the Phillies the edge right now. I think the Phillies overall, I think they have a more complete team than the Braves, top to bottom. I just look at it. I like the pitching better. I like the offense better, and that has nothing to do with the Braves falling apart recently. I mean, what the Phillies have been able to do since they fired their manager has been spectacular. And the Miami Marlins are probably one of the best stories in baseball. Again, when you have a team like the Marlins and you just don't have a ton of money behind it, it gets a little concerning, but their starting pitching has been very good. They've had the offense. They've generated the runs that they need to win baseball games. But when I look at the most complete team in that division, even though they are getting towards the older side of things, I would say the Philadelphia Phillies are the group that I would pick to win it right now.
Yep, and with the Philadelphia Phillies, we've been seeing Zach Wheeler really going out there and shoving. Him getting that All-Star snub, I think, is really going to be carrying him. Christopher Sanchez, he's starting in the All-Star game, and I think that that's a nice, shall we say, jumping off point as well, because with the city of Philadelphia, they are going to be the hosts of the All-Star game here on Tuesday. Right now, the National League, right around about like a minus 140, minus 135 favorite, and the total is 7.5. I do want to get your thoughts here because I just have not seen such a stark difference in terms of talent between the National League and the American League. And typically with the All-Star game, it's a crapshoot, but I really think there's a nice edge here on the National League.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it plays out not every year like this, but we've seen the National League has been better than the American League in the past. Now, from a betting standpoint, I don't love playing a minus 140 in an All-Star game, even though I think the talent on the National League is better when I look at, plus money for the American League or potentially the run line, which I haven't seen what those odds are for the run line yet. But when I look at the American League getting plus money, I'd be more interested in that. It would probably be just a stay away game for me in general. I mean, we have so much baseball to bet on Friday. I would rather take the night off than rush into something if I didn't love it. But I do think the National League does have the edge here just because of how much more talented they are as a group. And that's been clear throughout the season record-wise in the National League and in the American League. So I think National League will win, but I wouldn't be interested in betting and maybe potentially getting a live bet if the American League goes up just because it's an all-star game. Anything can happen. Guys are, they're putting players in to throw to one batter. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yep, I agree with you. And when it comes to the All-Star game, if you have an edge, bet it. If you don't, there's no need to force up anything or anything like that because you mentioned it. We're going to have over 1,000 baseball games towards the second half of the season. There's going to be so many opportunities. And outside the side in total, was there anything that you looked at in the All-Star game? Or is this going to be a night in general that you're just not going to do a whole heck of a lot with and you're just going to be looking at maybe a little bit more World Cup, looking at a little bit more of the second half of the season and perhaps some football futures?
Yeah, I'm taking some break right now. I think football futures looking at World Cup, obviously, if you get some decent value, which we're going to have in these games. I'm not too into betting on the All-Star game just because, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Probably if I was looking at something, I'd be looking at an Murphy. You're probably getting even money, I would say, on that because the pitching's really good, but the offense is also really good. It's a game just to sit back and enjoy in my mind.
Yep, and when it comes down to it, with the All-Star game, if you have an edge, bet it. If you don't. And I always say this, there's always people that want to bet on All-Star game MVP. Might be the biggest crapshoot that you could possibly think of in terms of sports betting. You just don't know what you're going to get there, but we know what we get out of you, Tanner. You join this podcast a lot. You always do a nice job in terms of delivering the goods. You're doing so much in baseball, football, basketball, and so much more. So let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
So you can follow me pretty much every day on the DraftKings Sportsbook social pages and then at my own socials at Tanner Kern across the board and then the Ride the Line podcast as you talked about before, on Tuesdays and Fridays with Grant Mitchell.
Absolutely, and our guy Tanner is doing such a great job looking at this great game of baseball. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. So a big thanks to Tanner for joining me on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. Coming up next, it is that time of the podcast that I give you my picks and analysis for the All-Star Game as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here, lovely Las Vegas, for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN family podcast. It's always a pleasure to be joined by Tanner Kern, who does such great work over at DraftKings. Every single time he joins me, he lends such great insights. He did so once again today. So a big thanks to Tanner for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis for the All-Star Game today as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that, as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at gunit_81. There's one game on the betting board, and it's the All-Star Game. I'll always say this whenever we get the All-Star Game. Not the game where you want to be putting all your shekels in the middle. This is not the game where you want to be mortgaging your house or anything like that. This is your coffee money bets. This is the amount of money that you'd be spending at the movies, on entertainment, something like that. So tread lightly with this. That said, we do have ourselves Dylan Cease and Christopher Sanchez as the starters for this All-Star Game. And right now for the National League, they do find themselves as a pretty good size favorite here. Anywhere between -134 to -142, and 947, 948 are the rotation numbers if you need it. Pretty much seeing 7.5 with regards to this total. The over is -120 and the under is even. And I did set my total at 8.1. I do like the over. Citizens Bank Park is 9th in the big leagues in terms of home runs allowed. It's a little bit more of a hitter's ballpark, and it's been relatively good conditions out there in the city of Philadelphia. It's going to be most likely in the mid to high 80s here for the week, so I do think that you're going to be able to get some good inning conditions, and obviously you've got some really good pitchers on the bump. Dylan Cease is going to be going for the American League, and he's been getting darn near 13 strikeouts per 9 innings, but you really don't need to handicap the starters too much because they're only going to go one inning, maybe two if we're ambitious. If you're looking on the American League side of things, they do have some relatively solid pitchers that are going to be going, but you do have a guy like a Michael Wacho's got an ERA that's hovering right around about a 3.5. They did have to scratch a few guys, like I don't think that Cam Schlitter is going to be going. You're not going to be seeing Ranger Suarez as well. Jacob Latz, Cade Smith, these have been guys that have been solid relievers, but not necessarily amazing relievers. And then on the National League side of things, in terms of pitching, obviously you've got some absolutely incredible guys, but you're not going to have Jacob Mizorowski out there. A lot of the top pitchers like Yoshinobu Yamamoto is not going to be going. If I'm not mistaken, Max Meyer is not going to be going as well. So you've got a few replacements, and with Zach Wheeler not out there as well, that does leave the pitching a little bit more vulnerable, but I do think that the National League is just the far stronger team here. One of your reserves is Pete Armstrong, who's been one of the hottest hitters in all baseball. James Wood has given you good wood, 400 on base. Matt Olson has been able to give you 25 home runs. Bryce Harper has been rock solid. And then on the other end for the American League, they were done a disservice by the fans. All these guys for the Toronto Blue Jays that got voted in, that's rough. You've got 4 Blue Jays on this American League roster, even though they're 8 games below 500 right now. Ernie Clement is starting at second base. Wholeheartedly disagree with that one. And typically the starters out there in the field, you typically get at the very least 3 innings in an at-bat or so. So that's something that's interesting to say the least. And when it comes to just the overall American League with regards to even the reserves, Byron Buxton, Nick Kurtz being out, that's going to be hurting the team a little bit. They had to scratch Vlad Guerrero Jr. He's not necessarily having the world's greatest season, but some of these guys like Don Rafaela, Kevin McGonigal, they're just not up to par, in my opinion, with regards to the National League side of things as well. So I think that the National League has a big giant advantage. You're obviously going to be playing this game at home. Wouldn't want to go on the run line, and because you're going to be seeing a wide variety of different pitchers, you do get a lower total in the All-Star Game, and we have seen some unders here in the All-Star Game over the last few years, but keep in mind, we've gotten 8+ runs at each of the last 2 All-Star Games. I think that we could do just enough to be able to get there, especially with so many National League matchups rushers out there. So I set the National League as a minus 163 favorite. We have seen the National League win over 55% of games over the American League this year. I believe the overall record is 163 and 129 is National League teams versus American League teams. So I mean, the National League has been dominant. They've got more talent. So I'm going to ride with them on the money line, and I'm going to take this 7.5 to the over, and that'll wrap things up for the Tuesday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to our guy, Tanner Kern. He does such great work over at DraftKings. He joined me in the last segment. If you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, Larsium, name does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And I'm with you guys every single day on this baseball season, give you guys picks and analysis on every game, every day. So I'll be back with you once again about. Thank you.